Y'all ready for our Pro Bowl weekend recap?
To be completely honest with you, I wasn't listening to a thing you just said. Let's go!
My leg looks like Picasso. see, God damn it.
Have you? I think you know the answer.
You. Oh my God. This man, he needs to be studied in a lab.
I can explain everything.
No, he can't.
I can explain.
There is no shot.
The Lakers.
I'm not going to let you choose the Lakers.
Damn
Pick
it.
something else. We made such a mess. I am a casual.
We are mega casuals.
I'm just kidding. You guys saw the title of the episode. This is the NBA episode. So Zach we were talking yesterday before we filmed the podcast, and I was like, there's nothing to talk about this week unless we just really want to milk out like Super Bowl stuff. And like there is a certain point where it's like, for me personally, I enjoy talking about sports genuinely. I don't like just talking it to milk it for like social media stuff. And so I try not to force topics into the podcast if it feels unnecessary. And so there was really nothing that we could talk about, and if there was certain things that we've had in mind to talk about on the podcast, it's stuff we're saving for the off season when everything obviously gets slower. But I mean, this isn't technically just a football podcast. This is a sports overall podcast. Just since Zach doesn't follow the NBA as much as I do, we try to stray away from the NBA as much as possible. But I figured since I'm gonna do a little solo epi this week, we're gonna talk about some NBA stuff because I do follow the NBA. Like, obviously, you guys know me as a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Football was like my first sport that I fell in love with to watch. And then basketball is really funny because I do have a favorite team. I'm not going to put the favorite team out there just because, one, it's not really that important. Two, it kind of leaves bias aside. And three, the funny thing for me about the NBA is I'm probably as much a fan of just the NBA and basketball in general that I am my actually own team. So I love watching not only like obviously basketball games with the NBA players in them, but I love watching how the NBA plays out, like trade deadlines, free agencies. And the NBA is really interesting because it's much more intimate since you only have 13 to 15 players on an active roster as compared to a 55-man active roster plus practice squad. It really does. It really does. You feel closer to that league. And it's something that's like a little bit. You can compare things a little easier in the NBA than you can at like the NFL. Like the NFL, there's 11 players on offense and then 11 players on defense. Meanwhile, it's just 5-on-5 in the NBA. And so like I can say build your best 3v3 for the NBA. You can't really build your best 11v11 for the NFL. Like that'd be insane. And I do love the NBA. I listen to probably 3 to 4 different NBA podcasts a week. I follow it, obviously having lived in Salt Lake City for 9 years with the Jazz right there, and know the Jazz aren't my favorite team. I like rooting for the Jazz. It's fun to root for teams that like aren't like they're always almost there. Like my second favorite team in the NFL is the Chargers. And my third is the Jags. And that's because the Chargers have always had the talent, but they like never really gotten there, and you're like really rooting for them. And the Jaguars have always been bad. But so the Jazz are definitely like my second favorite team. So, being within a market, and also Utah really does love the Jazz. So there is a pure fandom there. The environment and just the culture of the NBA is super amazing. And hold on, I got to fix.
Oh, speaking of, they just beat the Bucks. They beat the Bucks by almost 20. That's crazy. See?
My hair is getting out of control. It's so long. But I'm not going to talk too much because though the trade deadline is in 2 weeks, like there's not many big names. There's a lot of like small names, whether it's role players or bench players, that can be bundled with picks. Like obviously we just saw Kyle Lowry get dealt for Terry Rozier. And so, there's like your 6th, 7th man type deals that are obviously going to go down. But this year, there really isn't the like big name that's kind of floating around. There is one, and we'll talk about it. But so that's the thing. There's only like 2 big One's massive, but like also it's not confirmed. And there's another player that everyone has been kind of rumored is most likely going to get moved. So these are just like players that are most likely to get dealt. I only have two, and then I'm going to talk about another one in a little bit. I was going to talk about Zach LaVine, but obviously he just got shut down for the season due to injury, so he's not going to be traded. And I was going to talk about Pascal Siakam, but 2 weeks ago he was traded. So like, you know, all the names that were kind of hot commodities, RJ Barrett obviously as well, OG Anunoby, like I was kind of looking forward to this episode because there were probably like 6 names I was going to talk about, but now we only got 3, but it's kind of nice because I can dive deeper into like the situations that I think are interesting. So obviously I'm just going to start with the biggest name first. And if anyone is new here, which we've been getting a lot more support lately, so shout out to you guys. If certain things kind of like, if you feel momentum in the podcast, whether it's me solo or me and Zach, you feel momentum and something feels very sudden, that's just for TikTok. That's just like when we're creating a title for TikTok or stuff like that. And then we usually get back into our flow like seconds after that. So apologies in advance for that. But obviously the biggest name that everyone's been talking about to get traded is LeBron James. And I'll talk about if I think he'll get dealt or not. But not okay. There are 3 teams, in my opinion, every NBA how do I want to say this? Jesus. There are 3 teams, in my opinion, that every NBA fan and fan of just basketball in general should be rooting for LeBron to get traded to if he is dealt. Now, there are plenty of teams. It's a rough situation, though, because we'll talk about it when I'm breaking these down. But there, you know, if LeBron is available, like rumors have said he is, every team is going to call. So I'm not going to break down every single team, but for me, I personally think that there are 3 teams that are just the cream of the crop it's not just like the product of basketball, but if you just love watching the game of basketball, I think these are 3 great spots. And I'll rank them 1 through 3, 1 being like most entertaining, 2, like you guys get it. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I'm also recording this a lot later than I usually do. It's been a rough week. Also, California drivers. I'm new to LA, right? I've only lived here about 6 months. Rain is not that terrifying. It really is not that terrifying. What? Have you never seen it before? I swear. A single cloud goes in front of the sun, and you guys forget all coordination when it comes to driving. Okay. The number one team that would be so much fun to watch, and also the storylines that would be created for the league if LeBron got traded to them, and it is realistic, the Golden State Warriors. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be like, oh, LeBron going to the team that he played against. We'll talk about that. Okay, well, just wait. Stop writing your comment. Hear me out, and then we'll get to it. Let's talk about the good. Obviously, like one of the biggest things that people have always talked about throughout LeBron's career is he's always, every single season, trying to improve the shooters that are around him. So why not go to a team that has 2 of the best three-point shooters of all time on it? And this is also a team where, like, we've seen when Steph is a point guard who does not need the ball in his hands to thrive. He's actually arguably better off the ball because of how insane he is at getting open off the ball. So you have point Braun, essentially. And then you can, like, obviously Braun won't run the point, but in the way it would look, you'd have point Braun, and then you'd have Steph at shooting guard with Clay at small forward, and then probably Dre at power forward. And that's another thing is you'd get to match up Dre with his best friend as well. You'd think his best friend is already on the team, but no. And that's the thing. Like I was saying earlier, if you're a fan of just basketball, just the game of basketball, this would be fun as hell to watch. Like, you can say that you didn't like the era of the NBA when Kevin Durant was on the Warriors, but if you were a fan of basketball, you knew that shit was fucking awesome. That was some of the funnest basketball you have ever watched. And the same people that are saying that are the same fucking people that have been, like, mocking Trae Young to go to the Lakers. Like the people that would be mad about this are people who don't have LeBron anymore, or people... people who are so the Skip Baylesses, people who are just over concerned with another man's legacy. But I think just from a basketball standpoint, it would be so fun. And then also, like, realistically, the Warriors can make this work because of the contracts. I mean, you have a contract like Andrew Wiggins, but I think the big one is obviously the Chris Paul contract. And I never understood the Chris Paul trade in the first place. I know you kind of had to unload Jordan Poole. And I mean, it looked really interesting when it first started setting up before CP got hurt. And especially having him take a minor step back, it just, to me, I thought there were better options for a Jordan Poole trade rather than trading for CP's 41-year-old point guard who's injury prone. And obviously this was the first trade of the new front office for the Warriors, and I personally wasn't a big fan of it. And so you get the opportunity to unload that. And also, the nice thing about the Warriors, too, is they haven't had to trade a lot of their picks. So if you look at teams like the Clippers, the Warriors, the Suns in most recent history, like these are teams that are, I mean, the Suns not so much, but these are teams that are, like the Lakers, are always trading picks. They never have draft picks because they're just trying to get upgraded players. The Warriors haven't had to do that. So the Warriors do have current and future picks that they can trade with this as well. Now, for 39-year-old LeBron James, I can't imagine it would be a massive haul of first-round picks. If I had to guess, probably like 2, maybe 3, and then you'd also have to include like a young player like a Kuminga or a Moody, as well as CP and then the picks. So, and I think that's real. I mean, having the contracts and the picks to offer something is something that a lot of teams don't have for a LeBron James trade. Now, the biggest talking point obviously be, oh, wow, LeBron James is joining the team that he had to play against for so long because now he can't beat, like all these talking heads as if, am I becoming, no, I'm not big enough, but like, am I the concept of a talking head? I really hope not. But, everyone from fans to people on ESPN, Fox, like whatever, would just not stop battering the fact of this is going to impact LeBron's legacy. And to be fair to LeBron James here, as if he asked for my opinion, if LeBron gets traded, obviously it's going to have to be somewhat to a situation that he likes, but also he doesn't really get a say in it. This isn't free agency, you know? Like, I don't think LeBron would want to leave Los Angeles, where his son is currently at college and where he's lived for the past 4 years, and also he's moving into that mogul stage of his career. So, like, I don't think he'd want to leave Los Angeles, but if he's going to be dealt, he's probably going to be dealt to a situation that he can win in, and the Warriors are that. But, you know, everyone's going to talk about this is a huge hit on his legacy and yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, what? 39-year-old LeBron James so you're telling me that a guy who already broke the all-time points record, a guy who dominated arguably 2 decades of basketball, is arguably the best player in the NBA, after all of that happened, he went to a team with players that fit his situation, and he didn't choose to go there. He was traded there, but that's somehow LeBron's fault. Doesn't make sense to me. But I do understand where the negativity would come from, especially if like the Warriors didn't win a championship with that roster. It would be really interesting. So that's my number 1. My number 2, the New York Knicks. The biggest thing, I think, obviously, is LeBron would get to stay in a big market. Like I was just going to talk about him leaving LA. He's probably going to stay in a market that he can thrive in. I mean, he's LeBron James. He'll thrive in San Antonio. He'll thrive in Memphis because of who he is, you know. But if he went to New York, that'd obviously be basically that's not a step up nor a step down from Los Angeles. That's just a step across, essentially. And also, it's a really interesting fit. Like, I think, again, as a fan of basketball, the fit is super interesting because if the Knicks wanted to do this, they don't have to sacrifice a lot of depth. You know, they have a contract with, like, Julius Randle and Evan Fournier, and I'm pretty sure that alone makes up the money. They probably also want to include, like, Q Grimes because he's kind of disgruntled, although I don't know if Q Grimes would be disgruntled if he knew LeBron James was coming to town. But nonetheless, you have the contracts to do it, and you don't have the luxury of picks, but you still, again, you have more picks than, unless you're the Thunder, you have more picks than a lot of the NBA. And I think this is also, if LeBron's going to be traded, it's somewhat realistic because I don't think the Lakers would want to trade him in conference. I think that's a situation where trading him to an Eastern Conference team is one of the best situations possible, and I think that's why 2 of my 3 are Eastern Conference teams. And it's funny, though, because it's hard to say, like, would the Knicks do this? Because it's LeBron James, arguably the best player of all time, but he's 39. And the Knicks look super good right now. They look good even without Julius Randle currently, which is so weird. They look better without Julius Randle, which is like maybe what pushes you to make this trade. But I personally don't think the Knicks would do this trade, because if they were to trade assets like Fournier or Quentin Grimes, there's another trade idea that I think they would prefer without having to sacrifice as much, like especially picks wise. So I just think, again, LeBron in a Knicks jersey would look pretty badass. LeBron possibly leading the Knicks their first championship in almost third. Is it? No way. Is it almost 40 years now? Because we are in the 2020s. Please don't. I'm not 40, but that's going to make me feel really old. Yep, 73. 41 years. Fuck. Holy shit. Okay. So, yeah, the first championship in 41 years would be really, really insane. Also, like, just the city of New York has been starved for basketball success in so long, especially just the Knicks. You know, the Knicks were essentially like the Mets. They were just a laughingstock of not just New York sports media, but, like, just national sports media in the United States. So I think Jalen Brunson with OG Anunoby and then Mitchell Robinson and LeBron James would look so cool. And again, if you can keep Quentin Grimes to come off the bench, it's pretty interesting as well. So come on, that would be. You can't tell me that these two so far wouldn't be a lot of fun to watch. And also, like I said, I'm not just giving like unrealistic teams. And then number 3, I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. The biggest pushing point or selling point obviously would be like LeBron gets to go home. And again, it's a team that he can help compete in the Eastern Conference. I think that's if I'm LeBron and I'm saying I'm going to get traded, I think the Eastern Conference is where I'd rather get traded to, because the Western Conference, just like between the Nuggets and arguably, in my opinion, the Clippers are the second best team in the Western Conference right now. But, you know, the Nuggets, the Clippers, the Timberwolves, the Thunder, like the West is just so dominant right now, and it's not top heavy how the Eastern Conference is. But then, I mean, to be fair to the Eastern Conference's strength, you have Milwaukee, the Celtics, and the 76ers. But, like, who knows how long the 76ers are going to be down for without Joel Embiid. So, like, I'd prefer to go to the East. And Cleveland is a team where you can win. Again, Cleveland has the contracts to trade, and you get to most likely keep Donovan Mitchell alongside LeBron James as well as Evan Mobley. And I think actually LeBron getting to mentor Evan Mobley would be really interesting. Not that LeBron is in like a mentor stage of his career, but I think just Evan getting to play with LeBron would actually... Evan's kind of been on not a downward trajectory because he's not getting worse, but he just hasn't gotten better how we kind of expected after seeing his rookie season. And I think having someone like LeBron in the locker room and to learn from, I think that would be amazing for Evan Mobley. And also the situation where if things work out right, maybe the Cavaliers don't lose Donovan Mitchell in free agency. So I just think, yeah, Donovan Mitchell, now you'd probably have to trade. Would you have to trade? Probably have to trade Nicholas Claxton. Jordan. Why did I just... Jared Allen's what I meant to say. You'd probably have to trade Jared Allen, and I don't even know. I mean, that alone is probably 2/3 of LeBron's contract, and then also just the picks as well, which obviously you don't have as many because of trading for Donovan Mitchell. But I think it's pretty realistic for the most part. You don't have to sacrifice as much depth, like I was saying. Just having Jared Allen's contract alone is a big piece that really helps out. Now, if I'm being honest, though, I don't think LeBron's going to get traded. 2 big reasons. Number 1, he's going to be really hard to trade for because wherever he's going to most likely leave after this season so he can go play with Bronny wherever Bronny is drafted to. Unless a team that he gets traded to is the Oklahoma City Thunder and can somehow trade up for a pick where they can draft Bronny, LeBron is most likely not going to re-sign for whoever trades for him. And so if a team does trade for him, they ask to basically say, like, we can win a championship this season, and we're willing to risk it all on that. We're essentially going to be the Los Angeles Rams of this season where we're going all in, and if it fucks up our future, we're fine living with that. But if we're able to get a championship out of it, then, hey, at least we're able to get a championship out of it, and we can, cross that bridge when we get there when it comes to the rebuilding era. That's something that's kind of interesting about the Warriors trading for him is like the Lakers can see that situation and be like, you know what? They might win a championship this year, but Bron is probably most likely not going to re-sign because the Warriors are not going to be in the Bronny sweepstakes. So we're essentially helping tear down the Warriors. We're taking some of their youth. And if they win a championship, that does suck, but also they're probably just going to get worse, and that lets us kind of bounce a couple more teams in the overall rankings of the Western Conference. So that is actually kind of interesting from the Lakers' perspective. But, any other team, like the Knicks, like I said, I have a trade later for the Knicks I think is better that they would probably consider more than trading for LeBron, which is a wild thing that I just said. But then again, you aren't sacrificing too much depth like the Warriors would be. Like the Warriors would have to sacrifice the most. It'd be players like an expensive player like Chris Paul, and then also just young players who they don't have a lot of, plus picks. Meanwhile, like the Cavs and the Knicks have expensive players, but they have multiple expensive players that are young-ish, so they want to sacrifice as many picks or as much depth. And then it's so funny because the upcoming NBA draft is going to be one of the most odd drafts we will ever see, and it won't be repeated because this draft is not going to be decided based on talent of the prospects. It's going to be the number one factor is because, okay, look at every draft ever. The number one pick is always, the most upside of a player. Every single season we see, oh, is this person the next LeBron? Is this person the next Michael Jordan? The next Tim Duncan? So-and-so, whatever. And that's the draw of the draft. But the approach to the draft this year is going to be really interesting because does one of those top three teams, even though Bronny is not a top 10 prospect, arguably, he's not even a first-round prospect right now, but does a team take that shot because they're like, we're not just drafting Bronny, we're drafting Bronny and LeBron James for at least a season. Do we take that chance? And do we overpay for a player? Like, do we think this player can get there, or are we just going to pay? Because, like, if it were a video game like Madden, how there's, like, the interest meter, it's like like LeBron signing to your team, it's like 50% for every single team, and then those, like, top 10 picks, that bar is just higher and higher and higher and higher because it's like, you might draft my son. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with the draft this year. Now, I just spent 20 minutes talking about LeBron James. So I'll go about the other big name this trade deadline, and that is DeJounte Murray. And for me, there's only two teams that I think not only are like just great fits, but also, again, they're realistic. They are situations where he can get dealt to, not just like, oh, we live in a world of make-believe, and if I spent 55 minutes on the trade simulator on NBA 2K signing free agents and like getting as many first round, like it's realistic. The first one, the Utah Jazz. You have the Sexton or the Jordan Clarkson contract. Now, a lot of Jazz fans and also just analysts would argue that Sexton is the current second best player on the Jazz behind Lauri Markkanen. And also, I do think it would be better to retain Sexton and have a backcourt of Sexton and DeJounte Murray as opposed to a backcourt of Jordan Clarkson and DeJounte Murray. So I think if you're giving up Jordan Clarkson, you'd probably have to give up one of your young guys. Obviously not like a Walker Kessler, but like probably one of the guys you guys drafted this year and a couple of picks. But if you're giving up Sexton, you don't have to give up as much because of just age. So that's like, I really think the Jazz are a good backcourt away. Walker Kessler is just going to continue to progress. And Lauri Markkanen, as long as he's in Utah, he's going to be in not only in All-Star conversations, but All-NBA conversations because he's just been so good in that system that they've implemented over the last two seasons. And if you get a defensive anchor like DeJounte Murray to pair with the defensive anchor of Walker Kessler, I think that's amazing. And you just become a better rounded team. And also just the picks that the Jazz do have, the Jazz are one of the aside from like the Thunder, the Jazz are one of the only teams in the NBA that can like actually put their hand in the cookie jar because of how many picks they got in the Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell trades. And then the other one is the Miami Heat. Now this was going to be a lot easier before Kyle Lowry was traded, but I actually think this could still work and actually just continue to improve the Heat. Now, you'd probably, most likely, 100% have to trade Duncan Robinson. I know Heat fans, I can see the comments right now that he's been good this season. I know he has. I know. And that's the trade-off you'd be having to make is, are you going to trade the shooting? Are you willing to trade the shooting of Duncan Robinson for the defense of DeJounte Murray? And in my opinion, I think that's a good thing to trade off on. Because now that they've added Rozier, if you can have Terry Rozier and DeJounte Murray in the backcourt with Bam and Jimmy Butler, I think that's a really good situation. Now, you wouldn't just be trading Duncan Robinson. You'd probably have to include Nikola Jovic and a couple picks. But, I mean, if I'm the Hawks and I'm getting what's looked like a really good Duncan Robinson, especially compared to last season, and a young up-and-coming player that we can mentor and try to make a significant role player in Nikola Jovic as well as picks, that's a win for a disgruntled player that you're trying to get off your books anyways. Now, if you're the Heat, you're 100% banking on the defensive Murray, Butler, and Bam to just lock up those premier 3 or 4 teams, the Celtics, the Bucks, or the Sixers. And, now do you match up well if you're just thinking about the top 3? I mean, Celtics with Porzingis, Holiday, and Tatum, and then obviously Brown as well. But, I mean, you're shutting down 3 of those because you have Murray that can put on either. So you'd probably put Jimmy on Tatum, Murray on Jalen, and then you'd put Bam on Kristaps. So, yeah, they would just be leaving Holiday. Jesus, the Celtics are so stacked. And then if you're going to the Sixers, assuming Embiid's healthy, the big 2 obviously are Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. And, yeah, you're definitely putting DeJounte Murray on Tyrese Maxey, and you're probably putting both. Well, no, Bam can hold his own against Joel Embiid. And then with the Milwaukee Bucks, you have Middleton, Dame, and Giannis, which are another 3 that, you put Jimmy on you put Jimmy on Middleton, you put DeJounte on Dame, and you put Bam on Giannis. And now, you're leaving it to the rest of the players. So I think if the Heat want to continue to really, I mean, the Heat, they're always in it, man. They are always in this. And when you count them out, you cannot count them out, Like the Heat, the Heat have kind of been the Buffalo Bills of the NBA over the last couple seasons. Like, you count them out, and then they get in, and then they really make a good case for being there, and then they eventually get their hearts broken. So now, I genuinely do think if they can make that work, then having flipped Kyle Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Nikola Jovic, and picks for Terry Rozier and DeJounte Murray, it's a huge win for the Heat, in my opinion. And then, okay, I was teasing this. I was saying that the Knicks shouldn't trade for LeBron because I think there's a better trade that they wouldn't have to sacrifice as much for that would actually just improve them. And in my opinion, that trade is if you're trading for Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon to the Knicks is so realistic and such a phenomenal fit. I mean, literally alone, you could just trade Evan Fournier, the Dallas first, and that's it for Malcolm Brogdon. I mean, that's one player and one pick. That's not, I mean, you don't really want you probably prefer to trade your own pick because you're going to assume you're contending for a championship. But yeah, you're trading one player and one pick for a guy who's going to be a really, really important piece. Not just for depth, but just, coming off the bench defensively. Malcolm Brogdon is such a premier fit. And again, just if you're saying everything out loud, you traded RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quigley, and Evan Fournier for OG Anunoby and Malcolm Brogdon. Huge win, in my opinion, for the Knicks. So those are that. I think the Knicks will make a move. I don't know if it's going to be as big as that, but I would love to see that. I'd love to see the Knicks, because if the Knicks trade for Brogdon, I'm taking them over the Sixers. It goes Celtics. Honestly, Bucks and Knicks are a coin flip, and I would just give it to the Bucks because they have Giannis. But it would go Celtics, Bucks, Knicks, Sixers. I think that would be amazing. Now, if the Knicks trade for Brogdon and then the Heat trade for DeJounte Murray, oh my God, the fun of the NBA postseason. Because, okay, if Miami does somehow trade for DeJounte Murray and the Knicks do trade for Brogdon, again, you're going Celtics, Bucks, Knicks. Again, I might take the Heat over the Sixers in that situation. So, that would be that top 4, 5, and 6 teams would be so good. Not to think about the Pacers, what they've been with Tyrese Halliburton. We're getting into the fun times of the NBA. This is why I like talking NBA. I'm curious though, what are some draft ideas that you guys have for teams either I did talk about or teams I didn't talk about? I'm really interested because we don't talk a lot of NBA on here, so I'm curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on the upcoming trade deadline, whether it's splashy names or just role players. I think it's really interesting to hear both sides of that coin. Players that are probably going to be bought out but dealt just because of their contracts, and teams that are looking for depth. Teams that you think maybe no one's talking about right now, but with one trade could go on a run. I'm really interested. And very curious if the NBA fandom is going to be more or less toxic than the NFL fandom. Because we had a TikTok pop off this week. It's over 250K right now, views. But it was part 2 of our grading the NFL coaching hires. And you just forget how many toxic people are out there. Okay, do people not know that we chose the name of this podcast? You guys know that, we chose this name. We weren't given this name. We didn't lose a bet. We chose this name. So when people are like, man, they really are mega casuals. Yeah, we called it that. Those are my favorite comments to see. Bro, how long have you been going to town for? How long has she been going to town for? Y'all just let this happen? Hey, that's rated R. Not on YouTube. Not on YouTube. Cover up your parts. But yeah, it was funny to see a lot of these comments. But I'm tired, man. I'm literally going to bed. I am rendering this, and I'm going to bed. That's how late it is. Okay, it's also not late, by the way. It's 7:54. That's late for me. Okay, I go to bed at 8:30, so this is late to me. But no, I'm curious your guys' thoughts on the NBA. If you guys want me to talk more NBA, if you want me and Zach to do some more NBA coverage, let us know. Once the postseason rolls around, we usually do touch into it a little bit, especially award season, stuff like that. Zach is always very curious on my thoughts about it because once the postseason comes around, that's when Zach does start to pay more attention to the NBA. It's just, and to be fair to Zach, 30 teams, when you're not even a casual is, if you're calling Zach a casual fan, that's giving him more credit because he doesn't follow it too much. But once the postseason rolls around, he had some pretty damn good predictions last year in the postseason. So we'll talk about it. But yeah. Hope you guys like this. 32 minutes. Kind of a short episode, but not bad. We'll be back next week talking our reactions to NFL awards and the Super Bowl. Look at that. Next time we talk, we will know. Next time I am talking to this camera with Zach, we will know who won the Super Bowl. That NFL season flew by. Anyways, I'm going to go. Thanks guys for watching. Make sure to check us out on Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcast, Spotify Podcast, YouTube, all of the platforms. We're there. Anyways, bye guys.